Welcome to a fun episode of the Military Millionaire podcast where today I'm going to have a coaching call with somebody from the Facebook group. So here's the backstory. This is Susie. I don't know anything about Susie at all. I posted in the Facebook group that, hey, I canceled on a guest because I didn't think they were the best fit. Anybody want to do a coaching call and let's record it? Boom. Susie jumps in. She's about to log in. And here we go. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you get something out of it. This is literally just like intro, totally off the cuff call, and I'm going to try to provide as much value as humanly possible. So we see what happens. Challenge accepted. All right. So first off, Susie, have we ever talked before?
No, we've never spoken.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that was on the recording. So I kind of did an intro for like 30 seconds before this was like told the story where essentially, actually it's kind of funny because if you look at my Facebook profile, you'll see that I took ChatGPT and I took my bio and my like mission statement and told ChatGPT, hey, make this more egotistical and douchey. And then I took that one and was like, make it more arrogant and douchey. And I did it like 4 times. Then I posted it with like a picture that it generated. And I was like, this is how I feel like people's bios are written. And it's actually probably my most engaging post in a long time because people are loving it.
I think
It
I
named
just saw it.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, it like named me the overlord of the military millionaire community. I was like, oh, that's good. I'm keeping that. I'm not a founder. I'm an overlord. But the whole reason for that is that the guy I was supposed to interview today, the bio I was reading through it and I was like, dude, this is trying way too hard. I don't even know what to believe anymore. Like, just some of it, I was just like, you know what? Not feeling it. We're not doing the interview today. And then I posted in Facebook and was like, hey, I got a time slot. Anybody want a coaching call? And so here we are.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, give me a little bit of the backstory. You said you've got on Facebook. You said you have a short-term rental and you're buying a house right across the street from it.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know that area at all, where Camp Lejeune is, but
Oh yeah.
around the base are a lot of beach communities. One is in between Wilmington and Jacksonville. And so this has been kind of a sleepy town. It's the gateway to this really nice beach. And we bought a house there 6 years ago, 7 years ago. We were in there for about 3 years, did some renovations. I really had no intention of selling the house, just thought this could be like a beach house for us in the future because we bought it for like 120K. And we put in 30K to put a guest house on the property
Oh cool.
and rented out the guest house on Airbnb and then did long-term rental on the main house. That didn't work out. I just didn't like how long-term renters don't really take care of your place. Then I don't really have anybody there to look at it.
Yeah.
So we ended up just furnishing it and saying, F it, let's try it on Airbnb. It's done awesome. And now we're like, well, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, this works. So let's buy another house in the same area. There's no fees that we have to pay this town. It's like a tiny town. There's no, they have no issues with it. I'll never buy a property, I don't think, with an HOA. So I'm never going to have to deal with neighbors that,
Yeah.
have issues with it. Um, so we're just going to do the same thing. We're under contract right now for a much bigger property. But our family has grown, since we're moving back to the area and, on to bigger and better things. Hopefully that when we leave the area again, we can get it rented out. But I'm like, kind of like, what if I hired a manager in the area and they could run it, like have 4 different rooms to rent in this house. It's like 5 miles from the beach.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful little property. I don't know. My wheels are turning, so that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Like the rent by room on the one you're buying now when you guys move out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So co-living, I mean, if you've got 4 bed, 4 bath, you could absolutely do that. I got a friend of mine, Sam Wiegert runs a community on co-living, and that's pretty much all he coaches or teaches. And most of his stuff is in. Oh, I want to say he's got stuff. He's got some stuff in Asheville. I mean, he's in the Carolinas, but like Asheville, where's his main market? I think it's closer to the coast, but I think it's South Carolina. I'll confirm, but like that's his whole strategy, and he'll actually take like
Huh.
if it's a big enough house, he'll go in and like cut the living room in half and be like, "There's two more bedrooms," and like all kinds of. I mean, he gets crazy. He's got like 7, 8, 9 unit houses that were once a 4-3, um,
One
and he
kitchen?
rents. Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah, I guess you
yeah,
kind of.
yeah, I guess so. But it's mostly like students, or he's got a demographic where they're probably not all cooking, and like some basic ground rules and a living area, and I mean he'll make probably like I think he said it's like 2.5 times the normal like long term rent doing that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, that's what I'm
so
looking for. I want at least twice.
yeah, yeah, and if you
Right.
can do it without the headache of the short term rentals, I mean I'm sure the co living comes with its own issues as far as vetting and everything, but it
Mm,
can't be that bad. And he loves it. I mean, he's built a whole community around it and teaching people how to do it. And um, I'm actually dabbling. So my upstairs is an Airbnb,
yeah.
and it covers all the expenses here. But now that I've gotten divorced and moved in here, um, I'm like, well, what if I turn that into like I get like 4 or 5 like young like hungry entrepreneurs in the area that are single, and just be like, hey, like rent a room. We'll talk once a week on like goals or whatever, and I can make it people that
Yeah.
I actually enjoy hanging out with instead of some of my Airbnb guests are really cool and some of my Airbnb guests are not so cool.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
so it's got Airbnb guests that smoke pot in the house, and then Airbnb guests that claim the house smells like pot when it doesn't, and yeah, you know the game. Um,
Yeah. It's different when you're there on the property. It's way more personal. When you're not there, you don't see it and you're just making a paycheck, or you're making that rent. But
yeah.
when you're there, it's different. Yeah.
So you guys are overseas right now. When are you moving back?
In May. We're moving back in May. Should be closing on this property at the beginning of April,
Awesome.
and we'll hit the ground running. I'm gonna go. I haven't been working, so I gotta get back to work. Got a lot to kind of finalize
Yeah.
before we hit the ground over there.
So walk me through. So your first house, you bought it for how much, and you put 30K into it?
We bought it for 120,
Wow.
and it was a 2 bed, 1.5 bath house, and it was a fully fenced in, and it has a big metal garage on a large concrete slab, and then it had a workshop also on a concrete slab. So the workshop already had electricity, and we took a personal loan out, like I don't, it was like a construction loan, I think.
Yeah.
And we had a company come in and get water from the main house over there and put in an electric box. There were already heaters in there, like baseboard heating, and we just use a window AC unit, like a nice one. And we put in a kitchen and a bathroom. I found all the cabinets on Craigslist, I think. And somebody was
Mhm.
renovating their house. And I went out there and I measured them, and everything was going to fit spot on. And I took all these cabinets for $100, got an old stove for like $50, like small things to fit the houses. I don't even know the square footage, but it's a studio apartment. But it rents so easy. Like people just come for the weekend, and it's booked like 90% of the. I mean, for about 6 months out of the year, it's probably booked 80 to 90% of the time. And then in the winter, it's kind of a different game. You're kind of just like putting shit on a discount to
Yeah,
keep
very
the
very
money coming
seasonal
in.
with some beach towns.
Yeah, but like it's working for us because if we're bringing in like 40 net, 40K a year for it's one property. So it's getting rid of our mortgage pretty fast. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess I made that mistake early. I started throwing money into the mortgage, and it's like a 3% interest rate. And then I started reading some shit and like following the millionaire, you know, to the military to millionaire page, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just like throwing money away right now. So
Mm,
what the hell?
I mean, it depends on how you look at it, right? So yeah, you're right. A 3% return in a market like this is not incredible. But the nice thing, like when you do pay your mortgage down fast, right, you get rid of the amortization cycle. So you're actually like
Yeah.
when you pay interest up front, you compress it, so you save more than that 3%. And it is a guaranteed return. So if you don't have anything else to do with it, paying down debt's not the worst, especially if it's like a primary. That being said, I basically never make additional payments on my mortgages. I
Right.
stuff it. I stuff it somewhere and then throw it into a property.
Yeah,
And
that's what
yeah,
we ended
so
up doing. Yeah.
yeah, if you can bring in another one that cash flows, then you can. It's the vicious trap because it's like, oh, I'll bring in another property. It'll cash flow 2 grand a month. Then I'll have even more money to put down on this first mortgage. And then you're like,
Yeah.
why would I do that? Now I'm going to buy a third property. And then eventually you're like, I'm financially free. Now I'm going to just live off this and travel the world, which is great. But you're like, you never end up paying them down fast.
Yeah. So I did have a question about this though,
Yeah.
because I've been thinking about, we're closing in like probably the worst time in the last 5 years to get a mortgage. Um, but my my goal, so the mortgage, it looks like we're locked in at a 6.5 rate for the
It's not
VA loan,
terrible.
which is pretty good. And I didn't
Yeah.
have to buy any points either for that. So that was
Nice.
pretty nice. Um, but my thought is in the first year, I want to put a bunch of money. Like I'm going to be getting, going to be working again, so we're going to have some more income. Throw it at the principal for the first 12 months, refinance, and see if we can get it. I'd like to get the mortgage down to something that we could rent long term if we, because the thing is we're military, like we're going to leave, probably it could even be 2 years. So I
Yeah.
want the mortgage to get down to something where renters could come in. Worst case scenario, we need long term renters and they're going to make my mortgage. So that's kind of like my backup goal. I mean, the my goal for this year.
I would.
What are your thoughts?
Ooh. So I would almost say, not that that's a bad strategy because you're right. Assuming interest rates stay the same, that's probably the best way to or it is the best way to lower your payment is to pay down principal and then refi. Um, the One of the best things for the VA loan right now is they call it the EARL, interest rate reduction refinance loan.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a thing right now. I mean, it is. It's always a thing, but like right now, nobody's talking about it because it doesn't make sense for anybody. But the moment
Right.
rates come down, every lender in the country is going to be like, "Oh, hey, look at this product! It's amazing. Come work with me." And so what it does is after 210 days or your sixth
Yes.
mortgage payment, you can just automatically lower the payment or lower the interest rate. You have to refi, or refi, but it doesn't let you pull cash out. But it doesn't check your credit. It doesn't check your income. It doesn't matter if you live in the house anymore. And so, let's say rates drop to 4.5%, you could just click a button essentially, and within 30 days you'd refi to that lower rate without having to
Huh.
and it would refi based on your whatever principles left. So you could do that, lower your principal, and then if you get to the point where you can do the Earl, um, do it. Or you could, I would be if you have the discipline not to touch the money, which I don't necessarily. I will throw it at something fast. I would never have cash laying around. I'm like the worst investor ever because people are like, "Hey, you got 50K for this?" And I'm like, "I can raise it, but my 50K is already in another property. Sorry." Um, and so I don't keep cash sitting around very often. In fact, I'm terrible about this. I use my emergency fund as like a line of credit that I have zeroed out. And so I'm like, if I need money, I'll just use the line of credit and then pay it back down. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
worst answer that I could, I don't recommend that for anyone. I just know that like all my money's going into places that it works. So it's whatever. Um, but if you have the discipline, you could just stash that money in like a money market or an index fund or something where it's gaining a return while you wait. And then when you get to like a year and a half, 2 years, or whenever you get orders, then you can be like, oh, hey, rates dropped. We can do the Earl, or rates didn't drop. Let's throw this into principal and refi. And then if
Right.
rates drop and it makes sense for you to just do the interest rate reduction refinance loan without throwing all the money in principal, then you have a chunk of change to go to your next property with. So, I mean, that leaves your
Yeah.
options open a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
The other thing you could do is, um, well, it's not your primary anymore. I was gonna say your first one, you could probably pull a HELOC on, but um, you might be able to get like a local bank to do like a business line of credit. So like whatever equity you have in the first one, you could
Uh-huh.
open a line and you'd be able to use that for uh if you needed to throw money at it or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think it kind of the
Oh, I
problem is
see.
like nobody knows what rates are going to do in the next 2 years. I mean,
I know
I have the
everything I'm
sneaking
reading.
suspicion they're going to drop right at the election and then they'll go back up.
Yeah.
But uh, you know,
Yeah, from what I've read, and I haven't been following things for very long, but it seems like the year before the election year, and especially before a Republican, you know, election year. So we'll see. That'd be great. This would be a good year for me then. So,
yeah, I would not be terribly surprised if all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, rates dropped. Look at how amazing we are. Please reelect us. We solved all the problems that we created over the last 3 years." Seems like what every
okay.
president does, which I makes sense. Although technically the president doesn't control the Fed, but we know how all that goes. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
um,
yeah, no, that gives me a good idea. Okay, and then as far as no, like, do you sell your properties, or like when you're in a pinch, or
sometimes
how do you decide when you want to sell something?
I guess the most logical way to do it is what they call the return on equity. And so basically, you would just say, well, you bought the first one for 120. You're probably 150 into it. What do you think it's worth
No,
right now?
I started throwing money at it. So we have we have 30 left.
Oh wow, that's awesome. And what do you think it's worth?
Oh, it's worth probably 250.
Okay, so you got like 120K. So basically, what you would do is you would look at that and go, "Hey, this property currently nets me 3,200 a month or whatever it is. You said 40
Yeah.
a year, so 3,250, something like that. If we took that hundred, I mean, and by the way, that's incredible. If you only owe 30 on it, I mean, imagine you pay that thing off and you'll be up to that's a pretty sweet property. I'd probably let that ride,
Yeah, I don't
because
have any plans. I don't have any plans to
yeah,
not, but
so the way that people calculate it is you look at like, okay, if we took this 120,000 and that's equity. Like if we netted 120 at a sale, you probably net 110 after commission. So let's say 110. If we took this 110 and invested it elsewhere, could we get more than that? 3,000. So that's kind of the return on equity. It's like
oh, I see.
how much could I make if I invested what's currently sitting in equity in my property? But I'll say that as much as I don't do it, I'm not planning to refi my current properties again. I'm just gonna let them. I mean, I'll let them pay themselves down. Occasionally, I make 100, $200 a month. A little bonus dip or whatever. I'm OCD. I love it when my property mortgages are like an even number. And so I'll if it's like 115,100, I'll be like extra $100. Now we're at 115,000 on the dot for the mortgage. It's like a weird game I play sometimes. But other than that, I don't really make extra payments. But once they're paid off, I plan on leaving them because
Right.
there's definitely a security that comes with that. So if you get that thing to where it's at zero, um, I mean, shoot, I might even at that. What's your mortgage on that? You paid 120 back in 6 years ago, so probably like $700.
No, it's 1,000.
Okay, so if I'm you, I would actually pay that off before I would put extra
Really?
principal into the first house because
Really?
you'd net the 1,000 and you'd have
Yeah.
and that. Whereas the other one,
Yeah.
it's like you're putting money into principal just hoping that rates do whatever. Would that extra 1,000 help you? Like if you do it as an aggregate, the extra $1,000 in your portfolio probably makes up for the difference in a long term, or at
Right.
least makes your other one break even or net or
I
cash
haven't
flow.
done the math. I haven't put together a spreadsheet yet. I've thought about
Oh,
that. It does
yeah.
seem like a lot of work, but
I would just, I mean, if you just run your aggregate cash flow. So like when you're looking at, if you keep that money off to the side in a account earning interest so that you can use it when you PCS the next time, when you get ready to just look at the difference and go, hey, if we pay this down and get a new mortgage, that saves us $800 a month or $1,200 a month. But if we
yeah.
pay off the first house, that we already know what it's making. That's $1,000 a month. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I would probably just look at that and just make your decision. You might find that once you get that thing paid down to like 25 or 22 left, that cutting that check is an
Yeah.
easier. I mean, shoot, if you think about it that way, and this is the weird thing
Yeah.
with debt, especially like amortized debt. The closer you get to paying it off, the more it makes sense to do it. And
I know.
it's
It's staring at me every day. I'm like, ah, don't do it, Susie. Don't do it.
so I mean it's definitely you'll get a better return. This is why it's weird because when you think like I borrowed 120K at 3%, you get a better return. But when you
Yeah.
flip it and you think if I dropped $30,000 today, would I would I be able to guarantee myself $1,000 a month? No, not in most cases. But if you drop 30,000 on that mortgage, you just guaranteed yourself $1,000 a month in your pocket. So it's like at
Yeah.
some point, you're like, you'll recoup that in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And so at what once you get to like $20,000, it's like one check, and I make a thousand. It's like a guaranteed $1,000. At that point, when you flip it like that, it's like, yeah, it's technically a 3% interest loan, but really, I'm my cash on cash return on that 20 grand is less than 2 years. So
Yeah.
it's a 100% or 70% cash on cash return or whatever it is. So um,
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
right.
I get iffy. Like I struggle when I get to like my last car. I was like, I'm never gonna pay this off. It's at 2.3% interest. And then when I got to like $4,000 left on the note, I was like, well, shoot, I'm paying $200 a month. I was like,
Yeah.
this will pay for itself in 2 years. I just cut the check and was like, now I got $200 a month extra to throw into something else. So
Yeah, that's
um,
right.
it's just a weird way to
Also,
look at it.
it'll free up my VA entitlement for the next PCS
Oh,
also.
that's a good point. Yeah.
That's the other thing about throwing money at this big house. The next one is like, I want to be able to free it up because you're
Mm,
not going to get the same interest rates on other loans, right? I mean, they're better
no.
interest rates.
Yeah. So the way the VA works on interest rates, the biggest difference is if you buy something with more than one unit. So if you buy like a 2, 3, 4 unit, the VA actually has just across the board. I think it's like a quarter to a half a point better than any other like
Oh.
multifamily loan. But then the other difference is what they call the like loan level pricing adjustments. So if you look at like a normal mortgage, they normally adjust at like 740, 680, and 640, something like that. 720, 680, 640. So like at every I'm gonna mess this. So like yeah, let's just say 780, 740, 680, something like that, whatever. So they have like three adjustments in there. The VA loan doesn't adjust until 680. And so anything like if you had a 681 and I have a 820, we're gonna be at the same rate with the VA loan. But
Oh,
with
I
like an
see.
FHA or a conventional
Yeah,
loan,
yeah, yeah.
you will have already had three adjustments to what rate you qualify for. And so you'll probably
Right.
be like a 3/4 of a point higher right there on interest, which is why the VA is so awesome. Well, one of
Okay.
many reasons.
Yeah. Okay. And then somebody was telling me also with the VA that has something changed where there's no cap anymore?
On your first purchase, yes.
Ah,
Afterwards, you have to do like a well, there's two different ways to do it. So if you sold both properties, then it would just automatically restore and you'd be able to use it again without a limit. Um, if you refinance them into conventional loans, then you'd be able to do what's called a one-time restoration of benefits, and you could basically it would count as them being off your entitlement, and you'd be able to use the full amount again. But then at that point, you wouldn't be able to do that again. Like you can't one-time restore by refinancing out like every property. So at that point, you'd need to sell them in order to
mm.
regain. But like, yeah, if you were going to go buy a $2 million, case in point, my buddy Matt Sapala bought a like $2.5 million home in like the Dallas area, and we were on the phone, and he was going to use a conventional loan, and we were talking about it. And anyway, he called me one day. He's like, "Dude, thanks." He's like, "You just saved me a down payment on a like a $500,000 down payment on a house." I'm like, oh, like he had read one of my articles and realized that there wasn't a limit anymore, and so he could do zero down. And yeah, kind of crazy.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
Granted, most
If
people
you
a $2 million mortgage is a little extreme, but he's
if
doing
you
well.
pay off the house, then you it that frees up entitlement. Period. Do you ever have, if your houses are paid off, do you go back to not having a cap?
Oh, in my head, I want to say yes. I'm not a. I'll double check that. That's actually not a common question that I get because most people don't pay off their mortgages fast enough for that to be a
That's
thing.
right.
Let me confirm that, and I'll get back to you. But I think that's the case. I think it counts the same as selling the house because you're not the guarantor on. There's no loan to be a guarantor on anymore. But let me just triple check and I'll confirm with you.
I guess I can look it up too. You probably can look it up faster than I can, though.
I mean, oh, you know what? Let's check out. Let's test something live that's never been seen before. I'm working on building. I just posted a video yesterday talking shit about gurus selling their AIs, but I am working on building an AI chatbot from ChatGPT that it lets you upload like source documents. So I uploaded the entire VA guidelines to this thing.
Oh,
So
wow.
let's see what it says.
Oh, yeah, great idea.
Do I recoup VA entitlement if I pay off my mortgage but don't sell the house? Let's see if this thing's any good. Searching.
Trying to think if I have any other questions. Oh, our house didn't appraise
Ooh,
to asking price.
the new one?
So, what's that?
The new one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're like waiting right now. He put in the lender that I went with, this broker. Last time I went with Navy Fed. This time I wanted to go with somebody that could like make things happen a little faster for me. So I went with this broker, and he had to put in like a an official rebuttal to the appraisal. And they had an appraisal done the month prior because it was previously under contract. Um, and it appraised for well over what I'm under contract for it.
Mm,
And so we're hoping that the VA accepts that and changes it.
I believe they will. In man, the VA appraisal process is incredible. So especially like if you're so there's two different ways it works. They've got Tidewater, which is like um, if a appraiser thinks it's going to come in low, they can give your lender or your agent like, hey, you have 48 hours to get me what you think I should be using as comps, and I'll reconsider before I give you the appraisal.
Yeah.
Which no other mortgage really does. But then if the appraiser still comes in low or whatever, yeah, you can. In most cases with a mortgage, you go back to the appraiser, and so you're like asking, hey man, I think you screwed this up. Can you do it again? And then their ego's involved and they almost
Yeah.
never change it. But in this case, you go straight to the VA, and the appraiser never knows that you did it, and so
Right.
then the VA can overturn it, which is incredible. So most of my lenders I work with, like my buddy Jason, like he's like, yo, I get like 60 to 65% of my VA appraisals overturned, and I've maybe had one or two non VA ever get overturned. So you'd probably be all right. All right, let's see. So this says when a veteran pays off their mortgage, they can indeed restore their previously used entitlement. However, this typically occurs when the property is sold. Evidence of the sales includes closing packages. Alternatively, if veteran sells the property, buyer assumes the outsiding. Oh, so that's if you assume it, you can do it. In your case, since you mentioned paying off the mortgage but not selling the house, standard process of entitlement restoration might not directly apply. But if you have specific scenarios in mind, such as renting out the property or unique circumstances, may be beneficial to consult with a VA loan expert for detailed guidance. All right, so I'm still going to consult with my expert, and I'm going to work on this thing a little bit more to get it to where it knows what I'm doing. But I mean, it started off with, yeah, when a veteran pays off their mortgage, they can restore previously used VA entitlement. So I think that's the right answer, and it's just
Yeah.
scraping like every bit of entitlement information out. But my gut says
Well,
that's right. But
all right. Cool.
yeah, I think you're on the right path. You guys are crushing it. I mean, that's awesome. You got a house that's cash flowing. You got a house right across the street that you know is going to do well. You got a market that you like. Um, you're going to have that one house paid off. I mean, that's all sick. So um, I love it. Love hearing stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, my goal in this town is to just fucking own this town, honestly, and just take the location and stuff. So my neighbor's house I really want too. I wanted it for like, as long as we've owned our house. But how my thing is if I buy multiple homes in this one little town, I don't want them to obviously compete with each other, because it's all the money's coming to me. So, and it's for short-term rental, and
Mm,
so I'm thinking buying different sizes. Every property needs to offer something different, have a different goal as the
yeah.
client or the, you
Yeah,
know,
like a different design or a different size or a different,
aesthetic.
yeah,
Yeah,
meet
different.
meet a different
One on
avatar.
pets, one says no pets. I don't know. So that
Yeah.
they're all bringing in good income.
Yeah, I think you're on the right path with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with, if you own the town and you worst case scenario, then you start doing long term and you start jacking up the rents of the area because you own everything. Um, I mean, you could always go medium term with some and long and short term with others. So you do like a
Yeah.
minimum 30-day and you get like midterm guests with some. And I mean, yeah, there's a lot of ways you could play that. And I don't think you'd run into an oversaturation issue for a little while.
No,
And
I don't think so.
by the time you get to that point, you're probably going to be tired of single family houses and move on to owning like boutique hotels. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's
which are cool. We just bought one in Tennessee. I'm excited about. So,
that's cool. How many rooms are in it?
I don't even know if you'd consider this one boutique anymore. It's 130 doors. It's three hotels, three pools, three hot tubs. It's got a wedding venue.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's sick.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be really cool when we're done with it. We've got about a $3 million renovation to update it, and it's not like nothing in the place is bad. It's just the guy who built it slash owned it was um, like one of those like kind of mom and pop live in the property, never really update it. Like it ain't broke, don't fix it, guys. And so while a lot of stuff works fine, it's just 20, 30-year-old designs. But it's a
Yeah,
cool property. It's right outside the Smokies, like 2 miles outside the gate, and it's like a log cabin, like 8 log cabin buildings. And some of the rooms have fireplaces in them, and yeah, it's super cool.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. So
That's sweet. Well, thanks so much for your time.
no, absolutely, Susie. Thanks for being willing to hop on. And if you ever got any other questions, you got me on Facebook now, so we'll just chat there.
All right, thanks.